honestly, whatever's down there, it's alive.
You didn't know?
So, the first time Runaways was ever mentioned in the comments to one of my videos, someone stated that they started watching Runaways with the expectation to see kids who ran away, but then they were kinda disappointed because on the very first episode, that never happened. But the truth is, the first season of Runaways kinda gave us a build-up towards that effect. They didn't start with the running away, but rather started with the story, and then gave us the running away. And as the finale of the first season started, the kids became the runaways that we wanted them to be all along. So hello guys, and welcome back to yet another one of my Runaways videos in my review of the finale of Season 1. So this episode was basically going crazy and all over the place, and there were a lot of reveals involved in all of this. And the thing is, all of these reveals were more about how the story is gonna be deviating from the comic books on Season 2. If you're kinda wondering and you did like Runaways, the series, as of last night, has been renewed for a second season. And this just means that we will see a resolution to the cliffhanger from last night's episode. But let's just get cracking on this review by talking reveals first. Number 1. From the very beginning of the season, the series has put us under the impression that Leslie is kind of in control. Now that did kind of change from the moment Jonah got revived out of his miserable state that we first saw him in. But the thing is, the big surprise here is that the entirety of the Pride group did not really know what Jonah was after. The bigger surprise is that Leslie herself did not know. I mean, they did throw us a curveball in last week's episode when they did hint at Dale York's thinking this was all about renewable energy. And that was the same for Stacey York's, of course. And everyone kinda gave them these weird looks, so when we came to this episode, it was a surprise that everyone as well thought this was all about renewable energy. Number 2. Now while it's no big surprise that Jonah is Karolina's father, we've got confirmation on that one. But we did as well get confirmation that Leslie is human. Now in the comics, each of the 6 couples who together form the Pride have a title, and the Deans are referred to as the colonists. And as opposed to their nature as humans on the series, they're actually exiled aliens in the comics. Oh, and Frank is actually Karolina's father in the comics, because there is no Jonah. Number 3. So we got an explanation as to how Old Lace, Gert's dinosaur, came to exist in this time and place. Tina's comment that could have only come from one place went to explain a lot. So once again, in the comics, Dale and Stacey Yorks are not really just members of the Pride, but are also time travelers. Now I'm not really sure they're gonna be portrayed in that manner on the series going forward, but at the very least, I'm thinking the Yorks are gonna be given the capability to move objects and living beings through time, and that might as well play some role in the future of the series. Number 4. So when it comes to the murder of Molly's parents and the flashback we did watch on last week's episode, almost everyone kind of assumed automatically that Tina was completely in on it. However though, on last week's episode we did get a flashback to young Amy, Tina, and Jonah, and that scene kinda came to prove that Tina was living in fear when it comes to Jonah and the actions of Leslie. So when it came down to the death of Molly's parents, she was rather passive. She wasn't really a culprit or a supporter of Leslie's actions. Number 5. So the series is not really planning on going down with the Alex and Nico route, or at least that's what it seems like. I'm guessing that for whatever reason the series decided to go with the Nico and Karolina route, even though that's not really big in the comics. Okay, so there are some hints in the comics that Nico actually might like Karolina, but the thing is, she actually ends up with Alex before he turns out to be the villain he ends up being. Number 6. So Jonah in some way has something to do with the Gibborim. He is either in contact with them, serves them, or is one of them. But in all cases, he's the major villain of the series, and except for Frank Dean, the Pride are no more the villains here. Number 7. Now we finally get to know who killed Amy, and as I did speculate on last week's review, it is Jonah. And apparently Leslie over here is the one who actually sent Amy the message, trying to warn her and trying to get her out of Jonah's way. And one other thing about Leslie is even though she was such a bitch, and even though she was willing to kill for the Pride, and even though she was a loyal servant to both Jacob and in return the Gibborim, she did not really intend to kill Molly when she killed her parents. She was under the impression that while they were in the lab, they left Molly behind at home. Number 8. There's a living thing in that hole in the ground. It's not just the rocks, and it's probably not about the rocks at all. And what I'm thinking here is that hole leads to a totally different dimension, one in which the Gibborim has survived over the years. Because that's exactly where they are in the comics when it all starts, they are trapped in a different dimension. In the comics as well, that dimension happens to be the very same place the Gibborim fled to after the Pride fell. Alright, so now that we've talked major reveals on this episode, let's analyze the scenes on this episode, or at least some of them, talk about that cliffhanger, and of course, some theories and speculations. Number 1, Frank Dean is the biggest bitch on the show so far. I mean, surprisingly, because he's even worse than Leslie, and she seemed to be the worst of them all. Number 2, hats off to the actor playing Jonah. I mean, he does a seriously badass villain. His facial expressions alone, they just tell you you don't want to double-cross that guy. Number 3, I think 2 of the most hilarious characters on the series happen to be Molly and Gert. Now, Gertrude did on one hand crack me up a lot with that whole emotional support dinosaur statement.
I suffer from anxiety.
Don't they have meds for that?
Yeah. Got a whole bottle of them sitting at home. And it's also my first day without my emotional support dinosaur, so yeah, I'll be fine.
On the other hand, Molly is just my second favorite. She's so powerful, yet she's like the most innocent of all of them. Of course, given her age, there is this childishness to her character, which is just extremely funny. But it is not just that, because she doesn't just crack me up, but she's also extremely realistic and very close to her character in the comics. Number 4. Now, I'm not sure what kind of deal Alex worked out with Darius in order to get all that money. But what I'm really wondering about here is who sent Jonah that message. Mission accomplished, let me know what's next. And because it was sent from some unknown number, it kind of adds up to the amount of cliffhangers we have at hand. But why am I saying this in conjunction with Alex? It is simply because he could be the one who sent Jonah that message. After all, it is revealed on the pages of the comics and at some point that Alex is a mole for the Gibborim. And no, not a mole for the Pride, but a mole for the Gibborim. So when it was revealed, it wasn't just revealed to his fellow team members, but also to the members of the Pride. So if the series were planning to go in that direction, and if Alex were to be the mole for the Gibborim, then he would directly be reporting to Jonah and not to anyone else. Number 5. Now, another reason why Alex would be working directly with Jonah if he were a mole within the Runaways is that his parents, along with the rest of the Pride members, are all turning against Jonah. Now, when you think of all of this, the first season ended very different from the comics and on a very good note. So apparently all of them were going in a different direction from the comics and from the get-go. We get to realize that all they did believing this was about 2 reasons. The first is a selfish one, which is all about making money. But the second one, though, is all about getting this renewable energy source, one that would save the world in the future. Little, though, did they know, and they still don't know, about the Gibborim's real plans. Now, I've talked about that in some detail on last week's review, but the Gibborim's real plans for the planet is its destruction. On the other hand, and in the comics, the Pride did know the Gibborim's plan, and they agreed to the pact. They were to perform all those sacrificial rituals in order to bring back the Gibborim. And after performing them for 25 years, the Gibborim would have accrued enough power to make it back to Earth and destroy mankind. And in return, in the span of those 25 years, the 6 couples would rule over Los Angeles. But after that period were to be over, the Gibborim would make it to Earth, destroy mankind, but spare 6 out of the 12 Pride members. And while the lives of 6 of them would end with the rest of mankind, the other 6 would be granted immortality in the paradise of the Gibborim's creation. Number 6, Jonah's body was starting to get all worn out again. And that was kind of pretty quick. I mean, he's just been revived. So I'm kind of thinking here, the way the series is doing the character of Jonah, who has no counterpart in the comics, is basically that the more he uses his powers, the faster he gets worn out. That could probably be as well a good justification as to why he did give powers to Frank. Probably in order not to use his as much. But finally, number 7. Whatever plan Jonah has for Victor Stein is kinda huge. Now, I can't really tell what those plans are, but the finale of the first season did set up some alliances and animosities in advance for season 2. So first off, we have the Runaways, and they do not trust their parents or Jonah. The second team is composed of Jonah, Frank, and possibly Victor Stein. And Victor Stein is basically a mad scientist, so he's basically gonna fit right in. The third group, though, is the Pride group, and they're basically working against Jonah at the moment, because even Leslie Dean wants him dead. I mean, there is a lot at stake for all of them here. They all love their children, and they all know that their kids are at risk as long as Jonah is still around. So while the first season was not really the best that Marvel has to present or is presenting on TV at the moment, it did manage to structure such a good setup for season 2. We've got 3 teams, one of them is trying to get rid of the other 2, one doesn't trust the other 2, and the other one is trying to protect one and get rid of the other. So it is definitely gonna be interesting to watch where this goes. One final thing though, I had 2 major objections to this episode. Number 1, when Jonah or whoever it was framed the kids at the very end, that whole statement about them making them America's Most Wanted was kinda dumb and a little bit of a stretch. I mean, I'm pretty sure that at any point in time there is someone more wanted than a group of teens with an alleged murder charge. But in all cases, in commenting on this cliffhanger, I don't think that Jonah necessarily was the one to have framed them. It is kinda possible it was their parents trying to make sure they run away as far as possible so Jonah would not be able to get to them or catch up with them. But number 2, I hated that bad action sequence at the very beginning of the episode. I mean, when Jonah showed up, you would have expected every one of them to do something, but they just stood in place, got ahead, and just ran away. That just did not make any sense whatsoever. So hopefully they do work these kinks better on the second season of the series. But that's all I've got for now on the season finale, so let me know in the comments what you thought of the season finale of the first season of Runaways. Let me know as well if you have any theories with regards to the cliffhangers and the events of this episode. Now I'm going to be posting an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. video tomorrow with what I think is really good news, so stay tuned for that. But you can find my Facebook page, Twitter, and Discord server linked in the description to this video and on the end screen to it. So if you ever feel like it, just drop by and let's spark a conversation on any other series that I do review. And finally, let me know if you like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like. And if you did like its content, it would be much appreciated as well if you subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos. But until I see you next time, thank you all for tuning in and have a great day.